The charts don't lie. A retest of 2700 on S&P 500 could happen sooner than next Donald Trump's tweet. Why would I say something like that? Well, one of the main things when you analyze the charts is you try to observe the cases of divergences. And divergence is something that is basically a mismatch between the price action and what some of the indicators are showing clearly are heading in the opposite directions. So this is a snapshot of S&P 500 taken on June 18th, 2018. And the case of divergence that I am observing here is the fact that as S&P 500 is trying to head higher, the RSI is really struggling to move above 5560 level. As you can see, it's running into what I've highlighted this here in light blue as a major level of resistance on RSI. Now, if you recall, the RSI was closer to the 80-90 level as it was trying to move to its all-time high back in January 2018. So clearly, as you can see, the price action on the graph itself is showing that we're running into major resistance around this 2770, 2790 level, basically major resistance level right at about 2800. And typically, historically speaking, the stocks or indices, they do not break out higher. In other words, they do not set all-time highs with RSI struggling to break above a certain range. In this particular case, for S&P 500 to move into an all-time high territory above 2875, would really need to see RSI to move significantly higher over to this 70, 80, 90 range, and it's just really struggling to do that. So when it does that and it keeps hanging at these levels, expect a pullback to happen. And in this particular case, this is what makes me believe that a pullback is just around the corner. If we take a look, surprisingly, even though it looks like S&P 500 really did not fall, and of course it's actually higher than it was compared to its May lows of 2600 here. Significantly higher, almost 200 points higher. And however, I cannot ignore this huge volume increase right here. This huge volume is basically a huge signal to me that a reversal is coming. And when I say a reversal, I'm not saying we're going to hit all-time lows here in the next few days, but I am saying there is a huge pullback that I think is in the making here. And the reason I'm saying this volume that nobody seems to really be talking about over the last few days is really huge. And I think nobody's talking about this huge volume, which actually is very comparable. And if you look at this chart and draw this line right here, this volume is just as high as the volume during the sell-off in February 2nd and February 9th of 2018, where the markets were dropping 1,000 points, 600 points, 1,200 points on certain days. Now, this time we're not getting this price action, or in other words, we're not getting it yet. If you have followed some of my videos, I often talked about what I call a delay effect. And so observing this divergence here, struggling RSI, makes me believe that S&P 500 really's got nowhere to move but lower from here on. Now, not just S&P 500. Let's take a look at what actually happening with Nasdaq. And if we pull a longer term graph on Nasdaq, what we will see is a case of divergence confirmed here in RSI as well. Again, this is a snapshot of Nasdaq on June 18th. The divergence between RSI and new highs often leads to unsustainable moves higher. In other words, what I am saying, I'm observing in this chart of Nasdaq is this move higher in Nasdaq to 77.47 is not going to be sustainable, at least not short-term wise. So short-term wise, observing this narrowing range between Nasdaq actually moving higher, but RSI is actually moving lower. The narrower the range between this becomes, the probability of an actual short-term reversal. kind of like what we've seen here, portrayed in this red candles right here, right? So we may actually get a red candle similar to these sizes in the making here in a very, very short time frame. So as you can see, Nasdaq clearly moves to an all-time high recently, but what we're observing is RSI is not moving higher. So that is actually a bearish signal to me, as bullish as this chart is. But remember, so was this chart bullish when? It was bullish when we had one of the biggest gains in the market in the month of January of 2018, right before it all fell apart. And it seems to me that this chart is really showing us certain signals that this potential reversal could take place. I'm not saying it could be as severe as the one in February. I'm just saying a pullback has a very high probability based off certain observations that I'm seeing here. And last but not the least, Dow Jones selling off on a huge volume, just like S&P. We can clearly see that. And that volume, again, almost exceeds the sell-off volume back in February. However, without the huge price decline yet. So that tells me the drop-off could be just around the corner. Now, this is probably the worst chart between S&P and Nasdaq. Dow Jones chart looks the worst. And here I drew these levels again to measure the height of the volume. And so here's the volume recently, just a day ago, compared to the volume when the stocks were heavily selling off in late March, and compared to the volume range. Actually, this one looks just a little bit tiny higher than the volume during the huge sell-off in early February of 2018. So the volume, the RSI, all of those things are pointing to a short-term drop, short-term reversal. And of course, the most important question of the day, do you know how to profit when markets fall? Do you know how to profit when certain stocks fall? If the answer is no, or if you'd like to learn more information about how to do it more profitably, just follow some of the links in the description below this video and get all the answers to the questions that's probably been on your mind. See, it's quite simple. When markets drop, they do it much faster compared to how long it takes them to rise. So if you can grasp this basic concept, and you would know specifically what to do, what action to take when markets drop, it could be a very lucrative, profitable opportunity. To give you an example, I have mastered certain strategies which are very applicable in today's environment that have produced and actually helped me set a personal record where I took $12,000 and turned it into $466,000 in less than 7 hours. Simply utilizing a very basic strategy for buying put options. So if you'd like to learn specifically how I did that, again, click some of the links below this video and you'll be able to get all the details. Also, if you're intimidated by reading the charts, if you are new to the charts, if you're trying to figure out how to use them, look, the truth is there's just too much information out there. And sometimes if you try to focus on too many things at once, it's very difficult to arrive at a actionable plan of what to do and what not to do. So I simplify everything for you about charts, applying them to different market environments, applying them to different stocks, and I break everything down, such as the case of divergences, the cases of RSI, MACD, multiple indicators. But instead of giving you 100, I actually identify 3 or 4 indicators that really matter, that really count, that really can get you some serious traction and making good decisions when you're trading. So if you'd like to take a chart course that is simple, that's going to break everything down to you in 1, 2, 3 type fashion, click the link below and make this year your most profitable trading year ever. Thanks for watching.